This is a Glock semi-automatic pistol, and so is this. The original Model 17 was introduced in 1982 and has spawned a large family of related designs and derivatives. I believe all or nearly all models of the Glock family are operationally identical, so these instructions should apply to any particular Glock model. Glocks are available in full-size, mid-size, compact, subcompact, and extended competition models, but I believe they all work the same. Often there are police trade-ins of surplus Glock pistols through national distributors for much lower prices than new. Glocks have a reputation for reliability and ruggedness, and many accessories are available for aftermarket customization. In a broader sense, these instructions may also apply to the copies or derivatives of the Glock, such as the Smith & Wesson Sigma series, some of the Koenig pistols, and so on. For complete instructions, consult the owner's manual for your particular firearm, which should be available for free download from the manufacturer's website. This video will demonstrate the basic operation of Glock pistols from the user's point of view. Since this operation is quite simple, I will also include basic field stripping in this same video. I have here two examples of the Glock, the Model 20, a full-size pistol chambered for the 10mm auto cartridge, and the subcompact Model 42, chambered for the 380 auto. I only have dummy rounds for the 380. Despite their different sizes and cartridges, you can see the layout and controls are functionally identical. Let's begin as usual by identifying the major features and controls. The frame. This was probably the first of the modern trend of polymer or plastic framed pistols. When introduced, this design caused media hysteria about undetectable guns which could pass through airport metal detectors, completely ignoring the pounder stow of steel in the slide, which also contains the barrel and recoil spring. The front and rear sights. This Model 20 has been refit with Trijicon night sights, one of the aftermarket accessories I mentioned earlier. This Model 42 has the original Glock factory sights. The ejection port. Another innovation of this design was to incorporate the locking lug into the ejection port, simplifying manufacture. The same is true of the subcompact Model 380. The extractor. On later production, this also serves as a loaded chamber indicator, showing by sight and touch when a cartridge is in the chamber. The trigger. There is no external safety on the Glock except this lever in the trigger face, a trigger within the trigger. There are internal automatic safeties to prevent discharge if the weapon is dropped. The magazine release. This is of the century-old Browning pattern, as are most semi-automatic pistols in current production. The magazine. Capacity varies by the cartridge being used and by the frame size, from a mere 6 rounds of 380 ACP in the Model 42 to the original 17 rounds of 9x19mm in the original Model 17. Extended magazines holding 30 or more rounds are also available for some models and cartridges. This magazine for the Model 42 has been fitted with an extension holding another 1 or 2 rounds. The magazine well. This full-size 10mm uses a double column magazine, while this subcompact 380 uses a single column. The takedown lever. I'll get to this later in this video. There is no hammer on this weapon, internal or external. The Glock family uses an internal striker instead. Now let's see how to unload and make safe a weapon of this type. Always keep the weapon pointed in a safe direction and your fingers away from the trigger. First, as with any firearm which uses a detachable magazine, remove the magazine, that is, remove the supply of ammunition, like unplugging an electric appliance before working on it. Press the magazine release button, and the magazine should fall free or can be drawn out. This does not mean the weapon is unloaded. See rule number 1. Here's a feature I mentioned earlier about the extractor. The Model 20 in 10mm is completely empty, whereas the Model 42 and 380 in the foreground has a dummy round in the chamber. You can see the extractor is in a different point, it's in a different position where you can see and touch to indicate a loaded chamber. After removing the magazine, pull the slide back to extract and eject any cartridge which may be in the chamber. Like most other modern pistols, the slide may be locked open manually by pressing up on the slide lock lever while holding the slide to the rear, then gently releasing the slide. For range safety, insert an open chamber indicator. For storage, pull the slide back until the slide lock releases, then gently release the slide. If desired, the striker may be released by aiming the weapon in a safe direction and pressing the trigger. You can see once again the full-size and subcompact are functionally identical. Now let's see how to load and fire a weapon of this type. These are A-Zoom snap caps, solid aluminum inert dummy rounds. They're expensive, but are perfect for most forms of dry practice and function testing. They are available for over 100 different cartridges. Alternatively, if you or someone you know is a hand loader, it is simple to make your own dummy cartridges without powder or primers, as I have done for other videos in this series. Cartridges are inserted into the magazine, base first, in the usual way. Again, magazine capacity varies by model, cartridge, and frame size. This compact Model 42 holds 6 rounds of 380 ACP in its standard magazine, while this full-sized Model 20 holds 15 rounds of 10mm auto. Most genuine Glock magazines will have witness holes in the back to show how many cartridges are loaded. A variety of loading tools are also available. The loaded magazine is then inserted into the magazine well until it locks in place. You can see, hear, and feel when the magazine catch engages. Next, with the weapon pointed in a safe direction and your fingers away from the trigger, the slide is drawn rearward as far as it will go, then released to run forward under spring pressure. This will strip the first cartridge from the magazine and guide it into the firing chamber. The weapon is now ready to fire. To fire, aim, and press the trigger in the usual way. The traditional Glock family of pistols do not use a traditional manual safety, nor do they have a hammer which must be separately manipulated. With one very rare exception, the Model 18, the Glock family are semi-automatic, meaning they fire one shot each time the trigger is operated. The trigger must be released and pressed again for each shot. In the rare case of a misfire, draw the slide back to extract and eject the unspent cartridge and load a new one from the magazine. There is no external hammer to recock. The slide must be drawn rearward and released to recock the internal striker. Firing continues in this way until all ammunition has been spent. The slide will lock back on an empty magazine. To reload, press the magazine release button to eject the empty magazine, then replace it with a loaded magazine. To release the slide, press down on the slide lock lever, or pull back on the slide until the lever releases, then release the slide to run forward under spring pressure. Firing may then be resumed. Now let's briefly see how to disassemble this pistol for routine cleaning and maintenance. First, as previously described, ensure all ammunition has been removed from the weapon. Double and triple check to ensure there is no cartridge in the firing chamber, because with the magazine removed, point the weapon in a safe direction and press the trigger. This releases tension on the internal striker spring. This is a point of criticism for the Glock design from a safety standpoint. Draw the slide slightly to the rear as shown. Pulling back too far will recock the internal striker, requiring the trigger to be pulled again. While holding the slide rearward a small amount, pull the takedown lever down, then gently release the slide. The slide and barrel assembly will come off the frame forward. Rotating this assembly reveals the recoil spring. Grasp the base of the guide rod and push forward to disengage the guide rod from the barrel lug. This later production Model 20 has a captive recoil spring assembly. Some older models may have a loose spring which will be under considerable pressure, so you must control the spring when removing it. With the spring removed, the barrel may be lifted out of the slide. All of these components may then be cleaned. Further disassembly is not recommended for routine maintenance. Reassembly is the obvious reverse. The barrel is inserted into the slide until its locking lug engages in the ejection port. The recoil spring assembly is inserted into the front of the slide and compressed until the guide rod engages the barrel lug. The slide and barrel assembly is then returned to the frame and drawn rearward until it locks in place. Perform a dry function test to ensure all parts have been correctly reassembled. This should conclude the basic operation, disassembly, and reassembly of the Glock family of semi-automatic pistols. The Glock, in its many varieties, is an international military and police standard sidearm and is also popular for personal defense and competition. They are in wide circulation and may plausibly be encountered anywhere in the world. Copies and derivatives of the Glock, with similar operation, are now beginning to appear from several sources. Everyone should know how to use one in case of emergency. That is the purpose of this video and this series of basic firearms tutorial videos. If you have any questions, please leave them in comments, and if you found this video useful, please consider a charitable donation through my website's PayPal button. Thank you.